Perfect. Okay, let's get going. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much to everyone that's joining and watching this webinar. I'm joined by Sam Howard. Sam, I won't steal your thunder. Would you like to just give yourself a brief introduction about who you're currently coaching and the teams you've coached before, and maybe in particular how you've got to coaching those teams?
Yeah, fine. I'll start at the beginning, as it were. I think it's probably easier. So I'm a qualified teacher, which I think helps in the coaching world. So qualified as a teacher, and then I was fortunate enough that the game went professional, and I had a good sort of 8 years playing professional rugby. And then I got a chance when I was playing for Exeter Chiefs to coach Exeter University, which was fantastic. So being able to play for the Chiefs and coach the university was great. And that's where I sort of first got the love of coaching, realizing that I was pretty good at it. Like we won what is now Bucks, but was back then Boosa. And so I sort of realized that that's probably the path that I wanted to follow. I came back to London and I was made head of rugby at Dulwich College, where I was there for 10 years. Loved it. So ran the program there. We put out more teams than any school in England, week in, week out. We won the national championship 3 years in a row. And it was all in all a great time. And then I was sort of headhunted, for want of a better word, by Old Elthamians, who are a very ambitious club, and Eltham College, where I did a dual role, head of rugby at Eltham College and head coach at Old Elthamians, who had gone up through the leagues, won sort of 6 promotions in 10 years. And then we got promotion from National 2 South into the National League. And then we missed out on promotion to the Championship by 1 game. And then unfortunately, sort of the backer, as we've seen, unfortunately, with Wasps and Worcester, the backer unfortunately passed away suddenly and unexpectedly, and the club went bust. So since then, I'm back in schools and I'm coaching a local team called Charlton Park, and I'm working at St Benedict School over in Ealing. So I'm quite old, so there's quite a lot of coaching in there, and I've missed out quite a lot of stuff that I've done over the years in coaching as well.
Definitely some experience we can tap into. Yeah, I've learned a bit there myself. First of all, a few questions come from that. Teaching background, what would you say the big difference between teaching and coaching is? Are they similar? Are they different? How do you approach the two?
I think if you were very intelligent, you'd probably say they were different and would come out with lots of different reasons why they are. Ultimately, I presume in coaching, I think it's much more of a sort of bigger picture. You're probably coaching players that know most of the techniques. So you're trying to refine things. You're trying to take things to a new level. Teaching, you're almost starting from scratch. So you're teaching someone a new skill. And so your basics of coaching are really honed, because you've got to be able to recognize what a child or an adult can't do and the reason why they can't do it. Whereas at coaching, you're at a high level, I would have thought, and you've got kids or adults that know what they're doing. Whereas teaching is probably a little bit more specific. That's maybe how I see it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I don't think there's too much difference.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on a bit of time, you get to Dulwich, you win 3 years on the bounce. Stupid question. Did you know that you had a good side to do that?
It's not a stupid question, because it sort of came from nowhere. We'd never entered the so the first year we entered the competition, we won it. So the school had never been in it before. So we had no idea sort of what we were going. We knew we had a decent team, but we knew we probably wouldn't go unbeaten in our normal fixture list. And so it was a sort of journey into the unknown. But I think, as we know in nearly all sports, momentum plays a massive part, and we sort of got on a roll. The players believed in themselves, and they almost had a refusal to lose in that competition. So if we drew the last 16 game and went through as the away team, The semi-final, we won by a point. And in the final, the two best players on the opposition, who, to be fair, were a number 8 and a centre, who were tearing us up. They did this special move that we knew was coming. We'd seen them do it, but they timed it wrong. They ran into each other, knocked each other out. Both went off the pitch. So it sort of had a name on it. So that year, no. The second year, yeah. The second year we won it, I would have taken on anyone in the country, and we went unbeaten in the season as well. We didn't lose a game. We lost one game at St Joe's to Millfield in a final, which is like 8 minutes each way. So that team, yeah, we were exceptional. And then the last year, again, it's just that momentum, and they were like, we don't want to be the first Dulwich team to lose. And so yeah, it was great 3 years, and they were all great teams, but they sort of, Cup rugby, they just had a refusal to lose, really.
I can see you getting excited talking about it and sort of reminiscing. I'll start with the second year, actually. I've got a question about that first year as well, but the second year, you said that you had a feeling, you had a good side. Like, what is that? Is that simply, I've got a very good 15 or 20 players, however many it was? Or is it something a bit more than that? And how would you describe that to other coaches that perhaps looking to find that amongst their teams?
I think that was a simple one. Like, they'd been good all through the school. So like, you get good years, you get bad years. So like the first year we won, they were a decent side, but they weren't like special. Whereas this lot, they were excellent from like year 7 all the way up. They were good. And then they got to the final of the Roslyn Park Sevens as under 16s. A lot of good players. But as you said about good 15, we probably had 25 to 30 players who could, like recently, like, sort of reminisce, the boys were like, obviously everyone does the highlights videos now, but we were sort of one of the first to do it, and it went missing, and the boys were always like, where's that highlights video? And I found it not long ago. And when you just watch it, the amount of different players that are on there, and like you see them scoring tries, and it's like, so we had 25 or 30. And again, we had everything in that. We had like a 9 and 10. We had a big pack. We had speed. We had a full court game, and they also then had which is amazing. They had a massive confidence and self-belief and love of the school, and it was like. And then once they got going, like after half term, they would like, some of the rugby we played was fantastic. It's hard after Christmas because we're a one-term school, so it was tough. And again, in the semi-final, like we played against Hampton, who were excellent, and we blew them apart in the first 25 minutes, but we couldn't score. And in the end, we were clinging on, and in that one, we won by 3 points. So it could have gone either way. But yeah, we went on tour to South Africa, which helps as well, pre-season. And we didn't win a game there. Mm-hmm. We didn't win a game in South Africa, and we came back and we didn't lose a game. And I actually said that bizarrely to a parent when you're pre-meeting with the parents, and they will ask questions. They were like, how are you going to do? And I was like, I don't care if we don't win a game when we go on tour, but we win the cup when we come back. And that's pretty much exactly what happened.
I imagine you're in quite a fortunate position there. Not many coaches go into competitions or cups knowing they've got the best team. But did that change the way you coach that team, knowing that you've got the best team? Did that add a bit of pressure? Did that change the way you led sessions and team talks? Tell us a bit more about that if you can.
We would always try and develop. I was very fortunate. It wasn't like the whole Dulwich success story wasn't just me, and it wasn't based on the first 15. So the first 4 or 5 years I was there, everything was based on improving the fixture list, improving the coaching that the boys were receiving down the school in the B, C, D, E teams. They were my first priorities when they got there. Everything else was a bonus. And I was lucky that I had Simon Thomas as forwards coach, Matt Benedict as sort of to the centre, and we were a real team. And it was like, and I suppose the first year I was probably a bit hands-on. It's all like, but then I was like, got to open up, and they did probably way more coaching than I did. But we planned every session, and we took our game to another level. So we were very defensive in that first year in terms of how we defended. We just played a drift, we stayed out, and it was like we're just back our D all the time. And it was like, right, this lot, and we then became much more aggressive, got our line speed, and played a much more expensive game because we knew we had the players. And then the following year, we went the ball hog and was like, right, we're almost playing sevens because we didn't really have any forwards, but we had wheels galore. So we would always look at what we've got and change that according to the players. Whereas I think a hell of a lot of schools play a certain way that the coach wants.
Interesting. Okay. So
you know what's coming, and you can't do that. Well, I don't think that you can do that at schools because you don't know what's coming through the door. Like, as I said, all 3 years, our team completely changed, and we had the foresight and were good enough to recognize that actually we've got to change as well, which is great as a coach because it challenges you. And it's like, okay, how do we mix it up? What are we going to do? How do we keep evolving? So yeah, it did, it challenged us. But the other thing is, they were a great set of kids as well. Like they were like, it was easy to coach them. There was no egos. There was no, we had a real good sort of bond between all the coaches and all the kids. It was great.
You mentioned it a couple of times so far about how easy it is to see video clips and highlights. You mentioned going into that first year of the competition, you didn't really know what was going to happen. Do you think there's a lesson to be learned there from coaches, regardless of what level they coach at? That sometimes you can overthink it, and actually the best way is to go in a bit blind and just focus on your own team and own process. Do you find that helped a bit? Like, how did you go into that comp not knowing what to expect?
I think, yeah, you've just got to, I think you've always got to back yourself, and you've always got to back your players. And so maybe a better sort of example of that is when I went to Eltham College. And it was like, okay, they sort of had a very small school mentality and used it as an excuse. So we don't have many boys, so that's why we're not very good. It's like, well, okay, well, we've got enough boys. And yeah, we're not going to consistently challenge the Dulwich, the Whitgift, the Tunbridge. But if we get a good side, we can, like, we shouldn't doubt ourselves. So the first thing I did, like we entered the Esher Festival pre-season, which is all the big hitters are there. And suddenly it was an eye-opener for the boys to see how good schoolboy rugby can be. But actually, if they believed in themselves and applied, they weren't far off.
Yeah.
Over the next 3 years, like, we beat Dulwich up at St Joe's, we beat John Fisher, we beat Trinity College, Trinity twice in the National Cup. And it was just because it was like, right, we're going to go for it. And if it's not right for us, then we can always come out. But I think that players can achieve so much more than they believe if the coach believes in them. And Tomo, the other coach, always used to say, like, especially again, I suppose that first year, the players hate it when I say it because, oh, we were good. It's like, he'd be like, I would always make them believe that they could beat anyone, even though we knew we couldn't.
So, the classic question I can't miss out on asking: how do you make players believe that?
You have to believe it yourself. You've got to be authentic. There's no point. Like, I can't say, right, we're going to go and play the All Blacks. You can win. That's ridiculous. But you play to the, like, as long as you coach them well in the week. You have to play to your strengths, and you have to be realistic. So that first year, we actually won the St Joe's Festival, which is probably the hardest thing to win. And again, we probably had no right to win that. And every team, when we were sort of progressing, you could hear them going, how are they still in it? How are they still in it? How are they still in it? But it was like I was like, if we work harder, we fight, we make our tackles, we back our system. Back then it was we play in the right areas. And then we had a few star players like Tommy. If someone does a bit of magic and the opposition don't quite get it right, then we've got every chance. Like in the final, we played Filton. If we played Filton 10 times, we'd have beaten them 1. And that was the one time.
Nice.
And I think that's, and the more you win, the more you believe in yourself. So it's sort of, and that's, you just emphasize the positives, emphasize what you've done well, and blow smoke at them.
Beauty of sport, yeah. No, that's good. I'm not sure if I mentioned this at the start, but this is going to be the first of a series of webinars with yourself. So we've got a good introduction to yourself there. This particular webinar is going to be focusing on sort of coaching reflections and how you can look internally at yourself as a coach. So we're based in London, so Northern Hemisphere, so we're coming to the end of the rugby season over here. So am I right in thinking that we're coming to a time of season where you generally look to reflect on your own coaching abilities?
Most definitely. I think, like, in an ideal world, you should be like reflecting and praising every single coaching session you do. And that's the ideal. But we all lead busy lives and that's not always possible. But for other coaches, sort of, even if it's just on the way home driving or just a little thinking, oh, that didn't go so well, what could have I done better? Just so you're trying to make the best version of yourself as you can be. And I think now, as you said, a couple of months off is a really good time to sort of have maybe a real sort of deep think about, right, how did I coach this year? What did I do well? What didn't I do well? What and why? Why didn't that go well? Some of it's like me, oh, actually, I don't know why. And if you didn't know, ask someone, but yeah, really have a think about how you want to get better next year. And like, dare say most coaches will be thinking about the players and what we can do to get them better. But it's like, okay, have a look at yourself. How can you make yourself better? And there's some pretty simple ways that it can be done, I think.
Yeah, can you tell us, can you give us some examples of those simple ways that you can do that as a novice coach to begin with?
Yeah, I think like you can sort of break into two sort of sections. So I think you've got the no rugby skill or no rugby knowledge. So for instance, so my wife, who knows nothing about teaching or coaching or rugby, but if she got a few things right that take no skill, and you put in front of a group of players, they wouldn't go far off. So so I'm talking about things like enthusiasm, body language, positivity, being organised, being punctual, and getting to know players. Probably a lot more than that, but none of those take any rugby knowledge or skill. But if you get those things right, and I can go into a little bit more depth if you want, then you won't go far wrong.
Yeah, you're an experienced coach, and for other experienced coaches, they might see the obvious points. But how do you just kind of learn that they are the important elements? Have you just learned that along your coaching journey? Has someone else pointed that out to you? Have you learned by mistakes?
They're what I think are important. They're what I think make a good coach. Like there's probably lots of other things, and someone else may say, well, actually, that's not that important. As long as you get the rugby element right, then that's all you need. But I've seen, and that's the beauty of being a teacher as well. Everything's done team coaching. Like you're not in a classroom on your own, so no one else gets to see you, or you don't get to see anyone else teach. You're out there. You're open to if you get it wrong, the other coaches are seeing it, but you're seeing good practice. I've been lucky to work with some really good coaches as well. So you sort of get an understanding for what a sort of good person looks like, no matter what they're saying in the rugby. So I think enthusiasm is just a no-brainer. So enthusiasm, body language. If you're stood there because it's cold and it's wet and you're standing there with an umbrella shivering, like what you can't expect the players feed off the coach.
Yeah.
So for me, that enthusiasm and body language, that comes quite easy for me. So I don't really have to think about that one. But like if people would describe me, one thing would be like enthusiastic. And so, but for others, it might not. I would have thought it shouldn't be too hard. If you're coaching rugby, it's probably because you've got a love of it. But like we can't always be Mr. Crazy enthusiastic because we may be having a bad time at home. We might not have slept well. We may have having trouble at work. But there's always got to be a level that you've got to be aiming for, enthusiasm. Because if you're not enthusiastic, the people you're coaching aren't going to be either. And like you see it in teaching. That actually, as a teacher, for me, when I coach other sports, it's really good way for me, because I might be coaching cricket and not have a love for it and be thinking, oh my God, this is awful. And I can feel myself sort of like my body language dropping, and then I'm wondering why the kids aren't doing what I'm asking them. And it's like, hold on, look at yourself first. So you want that enthusiasm, that body language that shows that you care and you're there for your players.
Yeah. You said that those sort of elements, enthusiasm, things like that, come naturally to you, and they are who you are as a person. Is there anything that you found along your coaching journey that you did struggle with, a characteristic? And if there was, how did you become aware of that?
Yeah, I still do. Like, as I said, that comes easy for me. In terms of us, as I said, I think it's a relatively new thing in terms of the studies, and it's the sort of de rigueur thing at the moment, but it's so true about getting to know your players. They're just not like, all right, see you on a Sunday morning, you're a rugby player to me. Actually getting to know your players, it's proven that if there's a bond between the player and the coach, the players are more likely to perform for you. And I think I'm very good in a team situation. Like, give me a team, I can make them better, and I'll create a bond within the team. But I probably wasn't great at the one-on-one stuff. And so I know it's always on my list of things to do. Make sure you chat to at least one player today or in the session. And I don't always, because I'll get caught up in like the organising or getting everything ready, and then suddenly someone's there and we're into it. But it might be walking from the change room to the pitch. It might be you arrive at the same time as the player. And it might just be, how you doing? How's your week been? Do you play any other sports? How are your parents? Like, just getting to know a little bit about the player. And you might not get much back, especially with youngsters. Like, they're like, why are you asking? Like, yeah, I'm all right. But then the more you know, and there is a deep actual caring for them, the next time you ask, you get a little bit more. And then suddenly, when they're not training well, you've got that reason to go, no, you didn't train that. Everything okay? And be like, actually, no, I've had a really bad week of school. I've been suspended and I'm a bit down. And it's like, that's fine. It's understandable. So I think so for me, that's the thing that I'm all constantly sort of thinking, get to know the players, ask about them. And again, and you build trust. And once you've got trust, then so much is possible. And I think going back to those Dulwich days, there was a massive trust between me and the players, and then you get that buy-in. So, but it doesn't come easy to me, and it's something to work on. And like, another thing I've put is like positivity. So I'm a half glass full. I'm very positive, but a mate of mine who's a very good coach, he's sort of always a worrier. Always things can go badly. But when he's coaching, the way he speaks is always very positive. So, for example, a great example of this would be, before a game, you might say, right, we're going to make all our tackles. We're going to look after the ball. And if we play really well, but they beat us, so be it. Or you can say, don't miss tackles, don't drop the ball, and if you do, we're going to lose. And you've said the same thing. It's totally the same message in your head that you're putting across. Yeah. But the way players hear that is totally different.
Yeah.
You said exactly the same thing. We're going to make our tackles. Don't miss any tackles. Yeah. And it's sort of just checking how you speak, and that's probably the thing that coaches might not think about. And I think it's a real try and be positive. Sometimes the team you're coaching, it needs a bit of kick up the backside, and it's like those standards aren't good enough. Yeah, I'm not saying I'm not all airy fairy. Like, sometimes you have to demand standards, but you want to try and be positive as much as possible.
Yeah. You touched on it a bit there. Do you think as a coach, you know when you've done those things right, or because naturally coaching isn't all about get results? as much as some people would like to think that way, it's about winning or losing. It's not. So can you tell yourself whether, okay, I have been positive, I have shown enthusiasm, I have spoken to one person. There's certain things that you probably can't quite measure. Do you lean on the players? Do you build that relationship and speak to the players, or how do you gauge it? Do you make a few notes in the book?
Again, I think it's the relationship that you've got with your players and how long you've been coaching them. How long, like you might be with a new team, and so you've got to build a. I think it's very tough to ask a player, you'll get a feel for the session when it's amazing how many players and kids are like, oh, thanks, that. And when you're getting lots of them come up and say, oh, thanks, you're doing all right. If they just walk off afterwards, then you get a bit worried. But when they're coming up, but yeah, you can, and once you get to know the group, especially if you try something new and you get a feeling that it didn't work, you might want to speak to Old Elthamians, speak to the captain and go, how did that? And you get an honest answer. You go, yeah, it didn't. They might go, yeah, see what we're trying to do, but the way you went about that, it didn't quite work. The players didn't understand it and stuff. So you're again, it's an experience thing. Let's just say you're doing a drill. You're doing a drill and the ball's going down, or they're disorganized, or they're just not getting it, and you become frustrated. But is it because you haven't explained the drill well enough? Is it too easy? Is it too hard? And so that knowledge, and this is where your rugby knowledge does come in. That's where your experience and your sort of belief in yourself to be able to go, okay, stop this. Let's go back a step or go forward a step. And what I'll quite often do, especially if it's a new drill, just let them sort of make mistakes, because it will be pretty rubbish to start with. Let them understand the drill, and then it's like, right, that was rubbish, but now you know what you've got to do. Let's do it properly. And I think that's quite a good way of doing it. If it's a new drill they've never done before, it's like, right, there's the drill, and it probably will be, because you don't want it to be too easy, because then it's like, what's the point of it? So there'll probably be a few errors, and then it's like, okay, stop, let's get it right. And if they still can't, then it's like, okay, maybe you got to look at yourself then.
Yeah, I always think that's a sign of a competent and competent coach, because generally coaches lesser down and less competent are obsessed with how it looks. A training session looks external to parents. They want it to look good. They want it to look organised. Whereas actually learning is a bit chaotic, isn't it? It looks like making a lot of mistakes, which is interesting. Particularly at elite level, and maybe it's sort of working its way down, I find that mentors are quite popular at the moment. Is that something you've come across? Do you have another coach or sort of like a coaching support network that you lean on and bounce ideas off? And if you do, is that something you recommend to other coaches? And how would that sort of look and work?
I think it is a good thing. And it is, I don't have sort of an official mentor. Mike Friday, who's the coach of the American Sevens, he coached GB Sevens. He's one of my great friends, so we chat regularly, and so I can bounce things. Hold on, I can bounce things off. If Mike, sorry, Mike.
That's all right. That's fine.
Just a second.
All good. All good.
Plug that in. There we go. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So yeah, I've never sort of had an official one, and but I do. It's if you get a good one, if you're naturally, there's someone at your club or your school, then to bounce ideas off, then that's great. But I just think I've always been involved where I've been fortunate to have like 2 or 3 coaches. So Old Elthamians, like we've got a defence coach, we've got a forwards coach, and I'm very open in that it doesn't have to all be about me. It's not like, right, I want to do this, I want to do it. It's like, okay, if we're doing defence, I think this is a good thing, because most coaches, like my son plays under 14 at the local rugby club, and there's 3 or 4 coaches there, because you've got key dads that are all really kicked, right? And so there's most places have got a few coaches, and I think you should use them. But if someone's saying, right, you're going to do defence, let them do defence. don't sort of jump in and sort of go, oh, this and this and this, because then you get sort of mixed messages and the kids or whoever you're coaching not quite sure. So yeah, use the other coaches. Again, chat afterwards, what went well, what didn't go well. Don't be afraid of feedback. Don't be afraid of feedback, because if you're coaching with someone, then they're going to probably like you. So don't be afraid if they say, oh, I think that went on a little bit too long, or that was too hard, or that was too simple, or they didn't understand it. Whatever it might be, relish it, take it on board. It might be a little bit hurtful to start with. No one likes being criticised, but it's like, okay, yeah, I get that. Or if you're happy with what you went and go, yeah, I see what you're saying, but the reason I didn't do that is because of this, and we were really focusing on it. So, yeah, I think mentoring is a good thing, but I think it's got to be done in a right way. I think it's one of these big sort of, it's not a bad thing, but I don't think it's the be all and end all.
As we sort of wind down on these coaching reflection questions, I got one to sort of play devil's advocate. Do you think you can almost overanalyze your own coaching? Do you think you can think about it too much and get caught up in it? If you do, which I see you nodding, at what point is that line? And then, like, where do you draw the line between, no, I am overthinking this, I need to be a bit more relaxed about everything?
I think, yeah, it's like paralysis by analysis. So yeah, don't beat yourself up. Don't think, right, did I do on this session, did I do that? It's like, it's a general thing. So like we haven't talked about the infusing in terms of the rugby side of things. I think that's where people can look at, obviously there's quite a lot of debate, and obviously there's so much social media out there about sort of drills versus games and letting them play and beating yourself up. If you do a drill, it's like, I must be the devil, I must be the worst coach because you're not allowed to drill anymore. Like, don't beat yourself up. Like, if a kid has not ever passed a rugby ball, you have to show them how to pass a rugby ball, and you have to drill it because it takes repetition. And if they've got a bad habit, to get out of that bad habit, they've got to constantly do something. If you're tackling, to be safe, for the kids to be confident, you're going to have to drill, okay? But yeah, if your whole session is a drill, that's not great either, because whoever it is, adults or kids, they want to enjoy it, and generally people like enjoying games. So, but yeah, so don't beat yourself up on, oh, I did a drill, should I have done that? But likewise, don't just play games just because everyone says, oh, we should play games. It's like, actually, you've got to play worthwhile games. Otherwise, right, the kids are just on a lunch break. Like, you're the coach, you're there. It's like, can't just go, there's a ball, go and do what you want. What's the point? They can do that at lunchtime. They don't need you there to be that. So yeah, so don't beat yourself up, and just have little things that I hadn't thought about that. Like, sometimes the timings of like how long you're doing something for, just keep that in mind. And I think, again, as a coach, our aim is to make players and teams better. It's not like, if they just want to have fun, they turn up and there's a ball and they can go do what they want. And you have coaches because teams and parents and clubs want the teams to get better. So how are you making those players better? So again, it's one of it. If a child keeps dropping the ball, don't just say, stop dropping it. Are you able to recognize why they're dropping it and fix it? And I think that's the ultimate thing as a coach. We want to make teams and individuals better. And if you're doing that, you're doing all right. Yeah. If you're not, then have a look at why not. Actually, your rugby knowledge is really good and your drills are really good, but all you do is moan at the players and you stand there and you're really negative and they get the Whereas actually, or you're a bit more positive because your rugby is really good, or actually you're so positive, enthusiastic, that's where maybe a mentor comes in. Go and speak to someone that might know a little bit more about rugby, about something. They keep dropping the ball. How can I improve it? And it's like, yeah, because your language and your body language is brilliant. You just got to improve your sort of coaching methodology.
It's so simple, isn't it? But I think that line that your job or role, if you're an amateur, is to make players better, I think is sometimes so often overlooked. But yeah, I think that is epitomised perfectly.
Yeah.
And probably something that every coach should use. Am I making that player or group better? But I think that summarises things quite nicely. I don't know if you want to just anything else you want to add on coaching reflections. I have got a couple more questions, but
okay. Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about sort of you as a coach and how you're going to make the team better. I think another big responsibility, and I think we do have a responsibility as a coach, is how we actually behave.
Yes.
And so how we behave on game day. So when we get there, we meet the ref, we meet the opposition coaches, parents, supporters, we're friendly. And that's pre and post game. No matter,
regardless of the level as well, I'm guessing, all throughout the sort of...
All throughout, doesn't matter, from under 6 is to bloody Premiership. Like there should be, like rugby is about respect and we're so much better than most sports. But it's hard after a game. It might be hard, and you might be involved where the ref, and I've seen it with my son's team, you get basically a dad from the opposition refereeing it. And they might be awful and they might be really biased, but without them, there's no game. So you don't have to go and hug him and be his best mate, but he deserves a shake of the hand and thank you, ref. And then you can ask him questions if you want about the game. If you don't, I'm not very good at that. As in, I don't really ref say, oh, how'd I do? I'm like, what can I do? Well, like, what's the point of really like unless you've got videos and I can then, like, if you're higher up, you can go, right, I'll email you. I'd rather let's just chat about rugby or other things. But I'll always go, shake their hand, find the opposition coaches, shake their hands, and speak to the players in a positive way. And we must get those things right. And that's something that can probably be worked on. And again, during the game, screaming at the ref, shouting at the opposition, just things like that it might be really hard, but it's not a good look. Yeah. And I get it. If you've done it once, we've probably all done it. We all make mistakes. But if it's like, actually, most weeks I was sort of screaming and shouting at the ref or moaning about the ref, then bring that in. That'll make you a better coach and make you better, probably make you happier. So I just think that's another thing that again comes into self-reflection. As a coach, we're always like talking about like the New Zealanders. A lot of people sort of better people make better rugby players, but better people make better coaches as well. So we're constantly trying to grow, I suppose.
I think I saw somewhere that someone in Australia got a 92-week ban, maybe. I don't think I've quite got that length right, but that was something detrimental to the ref, which is never a good headline to get.
92 weeks.
Yeah, I know. Shoving over a ref, I think.
You know what? Fair enough.
Yeah. Not that I'm making excuses for it, but you can't get away with anything. I think that's caught on camera. So
don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Slightly moving on, last couple of questions. This Saturday and Sunday, I think, is the infamous, I'm not sure which is the right word, Twickenham Sevens competition.
Yeah.
Has made the headlines for various reasons over the years, but still attracts a lot of people, young people as well. What role do you see Sevens playing within the whole sport of sort of rugby union at the moment?
I think it's fantastic. I love Sevens. I've coached international Sevens. I coached, bizarrely, I coached Nigeria and we qualified for the Commonwealth Games. So played a lot of Sevens, played Sevens around the world. And so I love it. I think it's a great format. I think it's a great leveler. If you you can complicate Sevens as much as possible, but ultimately it comes down to pass, tackle, catch, and working hard. If you do those things, you probably win most games. But it's so good at highlighting your skills. So if you miss one-on-one tackles, there's no hiding place. The opposition are going to probably score. If you drop the ball regularly, the opposition are going to score. So in terms of highlighting your individual skills, it's outstanding, absolutely outstanding. So yeah, I think there should be more of it. Where you put it in the season, like I think it works where it is sort of April, end of March, April time, and then obviously you've got all the social sevens that go on during the summer. So yeah, I love it. I think it's great for individual skills. It's brutal, like it's brutal for kids because like it could be a final and one person that probably hasn't missed hardly any tackles all year misses a tackle and they go and score. It's on him, and it's like, and yeah, there's no hiding place. So it is brutal, but I personally think it's fantastic. The World Sevens is great. It's like a carnival, like all the tournaments around it. It's one big party. The Twickenham Sevens is fantastic. It's just a shame. I still think that England haven't got it aligned with it's now GB. Like you look at when Mike Friday was running, all the players that came through were all young academy players. So Matthew Tate, Haskell, loads of them who play sevens. Whereas now it's like a different sport. It's a specialist sport, which I think is a bit of a shame. And I think that you could get academy players on the seven circuit. And what an environment for them to be in, playing in front of 50,000, 60,000 people. But that's pressure for you right there. And so, yeah, so I love it. I think it's awesome. And I love the fact it's in the Olympics as well. I think it's superb.
I think Fiji have been quite a good example and success story of that, haven't they? Always predominantly focused on sevens to the Olympics and whatnot, and kind of now you're seeing some of their players excel in the French and Premiership.
They're just a different breed, though. Like if you go to Fiji, there's a rugby ball everywhere. They're just playing. It's what they achieved at the Olympics was great, but it's not rocket science with those guys. What they've got in terms of getting them to probably play as a collective was probably the hardest thing. But in terms of their natural raw ability, their physiques, they're just incredible. To be fair, absolutely incredible.
On that, actually, I was going to wrap up. One more question. When you've got a team of maybe the opposite to that, so players that haven't quite got that natural, glaring physical ability, does that therefore affect the way you coach that team and the way that you tactically approach games or coaching sessions?
15s or sevens?
15s. And obviously, it's now.
No, you obviously have to work out where your strengths lie. So I think I don't think he did particularly well with it in England, but what Eddie Jones did with Japan,
and yeah, I thought that.
And that remarkable win against South Africa, which go down as one of the greatest wins ever. He worked out, right, this is what we have, this is what they've got, and we're going to play to our strengths. And every team will have strengths. And so it might be your team, you got no speed, but you got some big old lumps. So there's no point, like, yes, we want everyone involved, but there's no point chucking the ball to the wingers every time if they get it and they just get tackled straight away. So whereas it's the opposite, if you've got a load of pace out wide, then you want to be getting it there. And that's when your experience comes through and working out coaching sessions that drum that into the players. So you want to be doing a lot of sort of gameplay. You want to be doing, you don't want to be drilling really. You want them to understand the way you want to play and why. So whatever you've got in your team definitely plays a part in the way you coach and the way you want your team to play. It's, as I said earlier about school, it's not a one sort of, this is how we must play rugby. It's a simple game, and ultimately it's pass, tackle, catch, work hard. But you got 15 players on that pitch, and even at international level, when Tuolangi's playing for England, you want him to touch the ball as much as possible. You don't want him carrying once in a game. So you're going to have that in the team that you coach, and don't be afraid to use it. You got a big lump that's hard to tackle, use it.
Yeah.
Like, it makes sense. Like, let's not be sort of, utopia would be amazing if all 15 players could all do everything, but we know that that's not the case.
And that's the beauty of rugby, isn't it? It attracts people of all different sizes, paces, speeds, different individuals.
Like, you want everyone to be able to pass and catch and make good decisions and do 2-on-1s. Like, there's nothing better probably in a game of rugby than seeing a big prop chuck a dummy and run 20 yards. It's brilliant. Okay. And you want them to be able to do that. But ultimately, that isn't their job. So they've got to be competent in their roles, and everyone needs to sort of understand sort of what you're trying to achieve and why. So yeah, definitely take into account what you've got, and maximize your strengths. And yeah, again, that's not rocket science, really.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, interesting, and I think it comes back to what I touched on earlier. Very much the focus on the basics, isn't it? It's not too complicated, is it?
No, everything is ultimately, as I said, it's a simple game. If you pass, tackle, catch, and make your tackles, 9 times out of 10, you will win those games.
Yeah.
Whoever you're playing. It's only the top games that you probably, as a coach, got to bring a bit more to it. But I'm sure that nearly all the games that teams I've coached have lost, it's because we've missed some tackles, or we've dropped some balls, or we've made some pretty bad decisions.
Yeah.
So, but as a coach, I'm just on that. As a coach, really praise the decisions. They're the things that drive coaches probably crazy. So a 2-on-1, or there's a massive overlap and someone runs into someone. That's probably more frustrating than passing the ball to the wing, but the winger drops it. It was the right thing to do, but the skill would let you down. And it's our job as coaches, right? That's my job. I've got to teach you how to pass and catch. And I've let you down because you've dropped the ball. I'll wear that, but don't just do things without sort of thinking. And that's what I try and coach as much as it's like, right, where's the space? There's a space. Why have you kicked the ball? Because I saw space. Fine, excellent. I've got to teach you how to kick better. Why did you kick it? Oh, I didn't really know what was going on. Well, okay, that's not a good thing. So yeah, like, don't be in games. If there's a drop ball, we're all human. We're all gonna miss tackles. We're all gonna drop a ball. We're all gonna throw a bad pass. That's gonna happen. But if the reason that we're doing things is right, then don't sort of beat the players up so much.
So praise the process, not the outcome. Is that the general?
Yeah, definitely. And even if if it's a new player that hasn't played much rugby and he sort of gets it wrong, right? Big him up, because it'll eventually come. And again, just on that, another thing is sort of, you're the coach, you're able to sort of moan at a player. But if other players are getting on people's backs, like, stop that straight away. Like, you can't have other people moaning at someone because he's dropped the ball. It's like, well, everyone drops the ball. He hasn't done it on purpose.
Yeah. Okay.
If he's not working hard, if he's walking, if he's being lazy, then that's what you want your players to self-police. So you want to try and you want players to not be afraid of giving it to each other a little bit, and actually that's where their leadership roles come in. And you want as many leaders in your team as possible, and you can give them that by saying, right, you can actually moan at each other if people aren't hitting rucks or walking, but if they drop a ball, give them a bit of flap.
Yeah. That's good. I'm conscious of time, so we'll look to wrap it up. As I mentioned at the start, this is the first of a number of webinars. So this one was focusing on self-reflection, perfect time as we're sort of in between the seasons. The next one will be on I was going to say controversial, which perhaps not the right word, but sort of the new tackle techniques. And as we approach pre-season, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere, how you can look to implement that to the team you're teaching or coaching. But yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Sam. And look forward to the next one.
Yes.